What's up, y'all? So today we're talking about fat loss without counting calories. Sometimes when I tell people that I don't count calories, they are surprised or even shocked because they think that if you want to lose fat, you have to count calories. And especially if you're in the fitness industry, of course you're counting calories. But that's definitely not the case. And over the past 2 or so months, I'm down around 7 or so kilos without tracking macros, tracking calories, without being unnecessarily restrictive, and just eating the foods that I still enjoy and being fairly flexible. Tip number 1 is go outside. If you're getting in only a few hundred steps per day, your appetite is not going to be very well regulated. Plus, you're just not going to be burning very many calories in general. I would say 5K, 5,000 steps is an absolute minimum to shoot for. And if you can get in 10,000 or 12,000, that is even better. Past 12,000 and especially past 15,000, I think you're not really getting that much benefit from it, and you're better off looking at your diet. This has a myriad of health benefits. It doesn't impact your weight training negatively at all. In fact, it almost certainly helps recovery, and it's just a good thing to do if you are a human being. Number 2, prioritize protein. Every meal should be at least 25 grams or so of protein. This is something where if you don't get in that amount, I don't really see the point in eating because you're not really maximally stimulating muscle protein synthesis anyway. So why bother shoving a bunch of food in your gullet that isn't actually going to be going to your gains anyway? And so I would say get in a decent amount of protein. My general overall recommendation is around 0.8 grams per pound, but if you want to go up to 1 gram per pound or so, that is totally fine as well. And it's said that protein is the most satiating, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, the most satiating macronutrient. That is true if you're going from low protein to moderate protein, but once you're around 0.8 grams per pound, getting in more than that isn't going to be any more satiating, and it's probably going to be physically uncomfortable. I've done the whole 2 grams per pound of protein and body weight before. Not fun. Number 3, fiber. Fiber helps fill you up. It's also very, very good for your health, and it's just a good idea to prioritize. You don't necessarily have to count it. I don't, but I try to get in a few servings of vegetables and fruit per day. Most people are not getting in enough fiber. There was a survey of American high schoolers, I think it was in Georgia.
They got no
peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit.
I think they surveyed like 900 people, and there were 2 who were getting in the necessary and sufficient amount of fiber. So most people, their diet is a lot of processed packaged foods, which have very minimal amounts of fiber. And so I think going out of your way to get this in, even if it's with a supplement, is a good idea. Ideally, it would be from whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, but if you really need to, a supplement can also work. Number 4, and this might be a little bit of a controversial one, accept some hunger. A lot of people seem to go out of their way when dieting to do everything possible to try to make their hunger levels go to 0. At a certain point, this is just not going to be possible, and I view hunger as a sign that you are on the right track. If you're never hungry at all, well, you might not be in a deficit, especially if the scale is going down. So if you think you're dieting, the scale is not going down, and you're not hungry, well, maybe you should actually try to chase hunger. I know it's not pleasant, I know it doesn't feel the best, but it might actually be a sign that you are on the right track, especially if you decide not to count calories. So hunger doesn't mean you're going to be losing muscle. It doesn't mean you're at risk for, passing out or dying or anything like that. Obviously, if you're diabetic, a lot of this changes. But for the average person, being transiently, occasionally hungry is not a bad thing. Number 5, focus on whole natural foods. Now, you can eat whatever you want and lose weight. There was some guy who lost weight and improved his blood work eating nothing but Twinkies. But I would say for the most part, if you want to have a successful diet, you're going to want to focus on whole natural foods. So lean meats, fruits, vegetables.
Then, who the hell do you think you are?
Whole grains, just the basic stuff. You don't have to go out of your way to prove to other people, hey, I can lose weight eating only nothing but burgers. Yeah, you can, but it makes things harder than it needs to be. Number 6, sleep. Sleep is absolutely huge, and it impacts basically every part of trying to lose fat. So a bad night of sleep or a few nights of bad sleep, they will typically increase your appetite as well as increasing your pleasure-seeking behavior. This is often why people have higher carbohydrate cravings and sugar cravings after they get poor nights of sleep. So it's going to impact the calories inside of the equation most likely. It's also going to impact your workouts, meaning that you're not going to be gaining as much muscle, or you might even potentially be at risk for losing muscle. It's going to impact your hormone levels. It's going to impact your P ratio. That stands for partitioning ratio. So when you consume energy, does it go towards just being stored as fat, or does it go towards maintaining or even gaining lean body mass? Number 7, palatability. So this is essentially how good does your food taste? Now, there's nothing wrong with consuming delicious food. I mean, it's part of being a human. If you can only consume chicken breast, rice, and broccoli, that's not much of a life. But this can absolutely be taken too far. There are some people where all of their food needs to be absolutely fucking delicious.
29-year-old Amber Scott only eats French fries.
They have a sweet tooth maybe, like everything needs to be just ratcheted up to 10. They have to have fast food, junk food, everything with sugar, salt, spices, everything turn to 11.
I don't like that. When are you gonna bring me something I like? Like, this is f***ed up. Don't do this to me.
This is really not a good thing, especially if your goal is fat loss. If you cannot consume fruits, vegetables, lean meats, whole grains, that's going to be an uphill battle in terms of fat loss for sure. These engineered, literally engineered foods that are hyper palatable, they mean that when you go back to these normal foods, they're going to taste disgusting. There are some people who cannot eat a vegetable. You give them a vegetable and they're just like they can't fucking eat it because their taste buds and their receptors are just so overstimulated that they cannot eat normal food. And by the way, this goes for the anabolic diet as well, and I would say this is the main drawback of dieting in that style. If you have to eat essentially like a child, this can absolutely get in the way of long-term progress. Is it possible to lose fat on this diet? Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a lot of success stories. But I would also be careful, and I would advise you that you not make this the majority of the foods that you consume. Number 8, energy density. So this is something where I think counting calories can be helpful, and I did count for many years, and I do think that it is a good idea, especially just to get those habits in and be able to assess foods accurately. Just because a food is healthy doesn't mean it's going to be good for fat loss. Okay, so in 100 grams of nuts, it might have 600 calories. That's not a lot of nuts in your mouth. And you see these diagrams or infographics on Instagram all the time where it's like 500 calories of this compared to 500 calories of that or whatever. And the more food volume you have, the more likely you are going to successfully lose weight. Now, this can absolutely be taken too far where it's like you're eating these vats of weird jellies that have no calories. Yeah, it fills you up, but if you have to take this to the extreme, something else is very wrong. But just generally speaking, the lower the energy density of a food, the more satiating and filling it's going to be, and the better the choice it's going to be in terms of fat loss. Number 9, don't eat mindlessly. I see a lot of people where they have no idea how much food they're actually consuming because it's just automatic. They're not even enjoying the food in a lot of cases. It's just like autopilot. This is what they do. If they're watching a movie, they have this food that they're eating. And this is where I think, especially if your goal is fat loss, and especially if it's something that you've struggled with in the past, be more focused and mindful with what goes in your pie hole. I also think, if possible, you should try to manage and manipulate your food environment as much as possible. I don't keep like carbohydrates or cookies or something or cake within reach. You think when I'm working, I'm gonna have a giant fucking cake just staring at me as I work in the morning? Eat me! No, okay, that's needlessly draining my willpower. Now, I realize not everyone has the capabilities to fully control this. Maybe if you're a new parent or something, you have to have all this snack bullshit food in the house that is going to be draining your willpower. It's part of the reason why a lot of new parents tend to gain weight. Firstly, if you're a teenager and you live at home with your parents or something, you might not have full control over what foods you have access to, and therefore you might need to actually use willpower to stop yourself from eating those foods. It's not ideal, it's not great, but it's something that's going to have to be done. Number 10, lift heavy things. The more muscle protein synthesis you can stimulate, the more likely you are to keep your muscle or even gain muscle when you are dieting down. I would say out of the clients that I've worked with, 90 to 95% of them can gain muscle while they lose fat. Okay, unless you're very advanced and you're already very lean, you're probably capable of recomping very, very effectively. And I mentioned P ratio before. Every time you have to gain muscle, that requires energy. Your body's like, oh, well, fuck, he did some curls. We gotta devote some energy over here. That is energy that is either coming from fat or that is not going to fat. Okay, so you are essentially increasing your rate of fat loss by skewing that energy away from fat. And this might mean that you don't lose as much weight. This is why a lot of competitions or challenges or Biggest Loser kind of stuff, they actually discourage weight training in a lot of cases. They just do cardio, because you lose fat, you also lose muscle, and therefore the overall weight on the scale goes down a ton, and you win the $1 million or whatever. But in terms of how you look, how you feel, and your health, as well as how much fat you lose, weight training is absolutely the way to go. And so for me, just following these very rough guidelines, they're not rules because I break all of them some of the time. You don't have to follow each one every single day, has been enough to have a very, very successful last couple of months of fat loss. Effectively, efficiently, easily, and quickly. And again, there's nothing wrong with counting, and I do think there is a lot of value to be had there, but it's certainly not the only way, and I think a lot of people would benefit from only counting for a short period of time, could be a few months, maybe even a few years in some cases, but then transitioning to a more instinctive style of eating. Right, that is all for this video. Like the video if you want to like the video. If you don't want to like the video, you don't have to like the video. No one's forcing you to do anything. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Definitely grab a copy of my book for information on the training side of things, which is absolutely essential. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.